traces in stone and cities beneath the earth, humanity's deepest footprints. Across deserts, mountains, jungles, and seas, the ground itself has begun to speak. Fossilized footprints pressed into ancient mud tell us where the first wanderers walked, while mysterious hand impressions in high plateaus whisper of gestures made long before written words. Beneath the waves, once thriving ports and temples lie silent, preserved in salt and sand. Deep within the Amazon and under the vast canopies of forgotten forests, hidden cities rise again through the eye of laser mapping, revealing that what we thought were untouched wildernesses once carried roads, canals, and homes. These discoveries are not scattered curiosities, they are pieces of one vast, unfinished puzzle. Each footprint, each sunken street, each buried wall expands our sense of how far back the story of humanity stretches, and how much we still do not know. In recent years, science has uncovered some of the most astonishing evidence yet that ancient people lived, traveled, built, and thrived in ways that challenge the timelines we once trusted. Fossilized footprints, recent highlights. The fossilized footprints at White Sands National Park are a testament to the ancient history of the region. These footprints, dating back between 6,000 years old, provide valuable insights into the lives of the people who lived before the flood. The footprints were discovered in the Tularosa Basin, where the climate was less arid and abundant vegetation existed. The presence of these footprints, along with those of extinct megafauna and predators, suggests a time when humans and larger animals coexisted in the region. Non-believers of the flood battle with one issue that must be resolved with radiocarbon dating of water-dwelling plants and animals is that these organisms can take up old carbon from the water, which could conceivably make these ages older than they really are. A phenomenon called the hard water effect. USGS scientists explored the potential for this effect using multiple lines of geologic, hydrologic, stratigraphic, and independent chronologic evidence and concluded that there were no significant hard water effects at play in this Ice Age lake, meaning the age results are robust. Clearly, these scientists are trying to find other avenues around the biblical flood. The footprints suggest a moment of panic, people running in every direction, as if something sudden and terrifying struck them. Perhaps it was their first encounter with rain, the flash of lightning, or the distant roar of thunder. Maybe they saw a towering wall of water rushing toward them, or volcanic eruptions shaking the earth, forcing them to question every decision they had made. They had heard of Noah's Ark, the warnings of disaster, yet many ignored the call. In the same way, today a small group continues to cry out, "Turn back to the commandments. Return to the true Sabbath on the seventh day. Forsake the pagan traditions of Easter and Christmas. For just as judgment came in Noah's time, so too the time of judgment is drawing near in our own." Larachi Coast, Morocco. Larachi Coast, Morocco, 85 late Pleistocene human footprints on an indurated paleo beach surface, with mixed ages represented, adults through children, and shore parallel movement. 2024. These footprints, dated between 6.3 and 7.6 thousand years ago. The varied sizes of the footprints belong to individuals with heights ranging from about 3 feet 11 inches, 120.8 centimeters, to 6 feet 2 inches, 189.0 centimeters, with an estimated average stature of around 5 feet 3 inches, 160.0 centimeters. This suggests multiple individuals, children, adolescents, and adults, were moving along the beach. While the Larachi site is currently well preserved, ongoing erosion poses a threat to its longevity. The exposure of new footprints due to erosion could provide additional insights into hominin group size and behavior, the research paper explains. Only to back up the fact the world flooded very quickly and the prints were preserved rapidly. Kubi Fora, Lake Turkana, Kenya. Kubi Fora, Lake Turkana, a challenge to time itself. The trackways discovered at Kubi Fora, near Lake Turkana in Kenya, have stirred questions that go far deeper than mud layers and sediment. These fossilized footprints, belonging to hominins yet astonishingly similar to those of modern man, do not sit neatly within the carefully constructed timelines of conventional evolutionary theory. They reveal something unsettling: the steps of beings who walked with the same form, stride, and identity as us today. Layered in hardened mud, the prints appear scattered in different directions, as though entire groups of people were running, some perhaps in panic, others searching desperately for safety. In certain places, the trackways overlap in multiple strata, suggesting that rising and receding waters repeatedly covered and revealed the same ground. Each flood left its mark, entombing lives and movements beneath new layers, only for the next upheaval to press its testimony deeper into the earth. What is equally striking is the presence of animal remains found nearby. Many of these creatures are virtually unchanged since the earliest days of their kind, living fossils that mirror those still walking, flying, and swimming in our world today. Their unaltered forms stand as silent witnesses against the narrative of gradual change. Yet, within much of today's scientific establishment, there is a relentless drive to uphold evolution as the unquestioned standard, even when discoveries strain its foundations. Each new find that resembles modern humans in supposedly ancient contexts forces uncomfortable revisions, or worse, quiet dismissals. But the footprints remain. They are not mere shadows in stone. They are evidence carved in the earth itself, showing that men and women like us once walked those ancient shores. Perhaps these people were fleeing sudden floods, racing across fragile land bridges as waters rose and the earth convulsed beneath them. Perhaps their story is one of survival, of seeking higher ground when the world below them became a shifting sea of danger. Whatever their story, it is written in permanence, pressed into rock-hard mud where time alone cannot erase the truth. Kubi Fora speaks not only of the past but of the greater question. Do these tracks confirm an evolutionary path, or do they point toward a creation that was complete from the beginning? Each print, each layered stride, challenges us to look deeper, and to ask whether the story we've been told truly fits the evidence left behind. Portugal, Alezur, Monte Clérigo. Portugal, Alezur, Monte Clérigo, Neanderthal trackways. Along the coast of Monte Clérigo in Alezur, Portugal, trackways pressed into hardened earth tell a story far older, and far more sudden, than textbooks allow. These prints, attributed to Neanderthals, are claimed to predate other discoveries, yet the evidence speaks of something else. A violent surge of water sweeping across the land. The ground bears the scars of a devastating flow, one powerful enough to trap lives in an instant. Human teeth have been uncovered here, along with bodies encapsulated in rock-like mud, preserved as though a great flood smothered them beneath layers of silt. Their forms remain sealed in time, silent witnesses to a catastrophe that came quickly, not gradually. These footprints, frozen in motion, do not point to slow ages of evolution but to a sudden upheaval where men, women, and children fought for higher ground, and left behind their last steps for us to find. Artifacts tied to footprint. White Sands, New Mexico, struggle in the flood. At White Sands, the footprints scatter in every direction, many overlapping as though whole groups were fleeing sudden rising waters. Some tracks show people stumbling to their knees, pressing hands into the mud, leaving behind impressions of struggle. Alongside the prints run long dragging lines, marks of sticks or poles pulled through the wet ground. These are the silent traces of people trying to carry their belongings, perhaps even children, as they fought to keep their lives together while the flood advanced. The ground preserved not just footsteps, but the story of survival, families burdened by what little they could save, striving for higher ground as the waters surged. In hardened stone, their desperate journey remains, a testimony of lives caught in a moment of catastrophe. Pressed into the ancient ground at White Sands are more than footprints. There are handprints, deep impressions where people braced themselves against the soft, sinking mud as waters surged around them. Mixed into these layers lie traces of ash, the remnants of fire and daily life, suddenly buried. The earth shows signs of rapid flooding, waves of water rushing in and retreating, laying down one sheet of mud over another in quick succession. In this place, the record is not of slow ages but of catastrophe, people caught in a flood, their steps, their hands, even the ashes of their fires sealed forever beneath rising layers of earth. Lost, or newly mapped cities, underwater. Egypt, Abu Qir Bay, Thonis Heraclean and Canopus. Beneath the waters of Abu Qir Bay lie the ruins of Thonis Heraclean and Canopus, once thriving ports of ancient Egypt. Massive statues, temples, and entire streets rest now on the seafloor, preserved in sand and silt as though time itself pressed pause in an instant. These cities were not gradually lost but swallowed suddenly, their walls fractured and their foundations consumed by rising waters and shifting earth. The remains tell of a world overturned in a single sweep, stone columns toppled, treasures buried, lives swept away. For centuries, these places were thought to be myth, yet here they are, silent under the sea. The story echoes the memory carried in footprints found across the globe. People caught in floods, mud closing over them, belongings left behind in haste. Just as White Sands, Kubi Fora, and Monte Clerigo preserve steps of flight, Abu Qir Bay preserves the very cities where people once lived. Whether in prints pressed into soft mud or entire civilizations entombed beneath the sea, the testimony is the same. The waters came quickly, and nothing stood in their way. Northern Europe, Doggerland, a pre-flood land washed away. Beneath the North Sea lay Doggerland, a vast, fertile land connecting Britain to Northern Europe. Between roughly 10,000 BCE and 6,500 BCE, its forests, rivers, marshes, and Mesolithic communities were gradually overwhelmed by rising seas. Researchers estimate sea levels climbed around 1 to 2 meters per century during this time. A slow encroachment that nonetheless reshaped thousands of square kilometers of inhabited terrain, but then around 8,150 BCE, catastrophe struck. A colossal underwater landslide off Norway generated the Storegga tsunami, with waves up to 25 meters, approximately equals 80 feet, high. This wave smashed across Doggerland, drowning the remaining land in an instant. A deluge comparable to modern tsunamis, obliterating the last islands and scattering people inland in panic and flight to some. This layered sequence, centuries of slow flooding followed by sudden inundation, echoes the outline of a pre-flood world overwhelmed by rising waters. Could Doggerland represent a remnant of a world before Noah? Its rapid submergence recalls the destruction spoken of in ancient flood narratives. While mainstream science dates the event to about 8,150 BCE, the pattern fits. A once thriving land, drowned quickly and without warning, leaving only fragmented memories beneath the sea. Pavlopetri, Greece, the oldest underwater town. Off the coast of southern Laconia lies Pavlopetri, a city now resting beneath clear Mediterranean waters. Often called the oldest mapped underwater town, its streets, courtyards, and buildings remain remarkably intact, as if abandoned only yesterday. Yet the city sank thousands of years ago, swallowed by shifting land in sudden floods. What was once a thriving coastal community is now frozen beneath the sea, its stone walls and pathways telling of lives interrupted in an instant. Like Doggerland in the ruins of Thonis Heracleon, Pavlopetri bears witness to a world reshaped by water, a reminder of how quickly civilization can be overcome when the sea rises without mercy. The flooded cities, echoes of judgment in a shifting earth. Across the world, the earth holds silent testimonies of catastrophe, entire cities and lands swallowed by the sea, their stones and streets left beneath layers of silt and shifting earth. From Doggerland in northern Europe, to Thonis Heracleon and Canopus in Egypt's Abu Qir Bay, to Pavlopetri in Greece, each site tells the same haunting story. Life once thrived there, but the waters rose, the ground convulsed, and the people were swept away. Even long after the Great Flood in Noah's day, the earth was still trembling and recovering. Seas shifted, fault lines cracked, and waves consumed entire coasts in moments. Doggerland, once a land bridge of rivers and forests, was erased beneath a tsunami. Thonis Heracleon and Canopus collapsed into the Nile Delta, temples and idols buried beneath the tide. Pavlopetri, with its mapped streets and dwellings, lies silent under the Mediterranean, its people long gone. Yet the pattern is not only physical, it is spiritual. These cities, like so many of the ancient world, rejected the one true God. They built temples to their own gods, raised altars to stone and wood, and turned away from his commandments. Just as in the days before the flood, when the whole earth filled itself with corruption, these cultures followed their own ways, forgetting the God who gives breath and life. Their end became a warning written in the ruins beneath the sea. The shifting earth and rising waters were not random, they were reminders of judgment, signs that creation itself was still reeling from the waters that once covered everything. And as each city sank, they became monuments to a truth mankind tries to hide. When people abandon the Creator for their own gods, the very ground beneath them will not hold. lost, or newly mapped cities, remote land regions. Amazon, Ecuador, Bolivia, Brazil.
From the air, LiDAR peels back the canopy and shows what time and floodplain mud concealed. Garden towns stitched together by causeways, canals, and broad roads. In Ecuador's Upano Valley, scans mapped a network of platforms, plazas, and straight highways. An urban landscape lived in for centuries, not a lone outpost. Far to the south in Bolivia's Llanos de Mojos, LiDAR revealed the Casares culture's low-density cities, tiered settlements with monumental cores, reservoirs, and causeways spread across thousands of square kilometers. These were places designed to breathe with the floodplain, to store water, move across wet seasons, and ride out rivers that rise and fall. Across western Brazil, earthworks and ring villages trace yet another urban tapestry. Geometric enclosures in acre and planned clusters in the upper Xingu, marking landscapes engineered for habitation, farming, and water management. Read together, these cities feel like a single story. Communities thriving on river edges, then slowly yielding as channels. Shifted, banks slumped, and high waters laid down new silts, layer by patient layer. Not a sudden erasure, but a quiet swallowing. Streets softened into ridges, plazas into islets, causeways into faint lines beneath alluvium, until only the forest remembered and LiDAR made the memory visible again.
Upano Valley, Ecuador. Hidden beneath dense Amazonian forest, the Upano Valley has revealed through LiDAR a vast network of plazas, causeways, and platforms stretching for miles. These were not simple villages but carefully planned urban centers, lived in centuries after the flood when the earth was still being resettled. Their layout suggests a people who had knowledge, structure, and purpose, echoes of a civilization still carrying fragments of the skills and organization from the generations scattered at Babel. But with the scattering came division of language and belief. Instead of worshipping the Creator who had preserved Noah and his family, the people turned to their own gods, spirits of the rivers, the skies, the forest, and the earth. They built with skill, yet their foundations were not rooted in obedience to God. Over time, their cities faltered. Floodplain waters shifted, channels swallowed plazas, and jungle crept in where once streets were walked. The Upano Valley stands as a witness to a truth repeated across the world. Even in the centuries after the flood, as the earth healed and peoples spread, civilizations that turned from God's commandments eventually fell. Their platforms and causeways remain hidden beneath layers of soil and forest, a reminder of what is built apart from Him. It may rise in strength, but in time it is abandoned, overtaken, and forgotten. Maya Lowlands, Guatemala, Belize, Mexico. Maya Lowlands, Guatemala, Belize, Mexico, cities of idols after the flood. Deep in the jungles of Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico, LiDAR has unveiled sprawling networks of cities that once formed the heart of the Maya lowlands. Roads stretch in straight lines for miles, linking ceremonial centers, plazas, and platforms. Reservoirs and terraces show careful planning, and pyramids rise like mountains above the forest canopy. The design mirrors other great post-flood cultures, plazas, causeways, water systems, like those of the Upano Valley, built by people scattered after Babel who carried fragments of knowledge with them. But the story of the Maya is also the story of people turning their hearts from the one true God. Instead of worshipping the Creator, they raised temples to many gods, sun, moon, rain, and death. Their greatest pyramids became altars of sacrifice, their skill in stone and water harnessed to serve idols. For generations, their cities thrived, yet their foundations were rooted in rebellion. Eventually, the same pattern emerged as in other parts of the world. Droughts struck, rivers shifted, and the jungle slowly consumed the temples. Plazas where multitudes once gathered became overgrown and silent. The very cities that had seemed indestructible were left abandoned, their stonework swallowed by roots and soil. The Maya lowlands stand as another witness to the rise and fall of post-flood civilizations. Their structures and layouts echo the same designs seen in the Upano Valley and beyond, a reminder that the skills given at Babel spread far. But without the worship of God, even the mightiest cities could not endure. Echoes of the pre-flood world. When the waters of the Great Flood receded, the earth was scarred and shifting, its people scattered from Babel, their tongues divided. Yet across continents, from the Upano Valley of Ecuador to the Maya lowlands of Guatemala, Belize, and Mexico, and even into the Amazonian plains of Bolivia and Brazil, the ruins speak the same language: causeways, plazas, and temples, all patterned with uncanny similarity. These were not mere coincidences of architecture. They were echoes of a memory, fragments of knowledge carried from the pre-flood world into the post-flood age. Before judgment swept the earth, men had built towering centers of worship to the sun, the serpent, and the stars. They had turned their ingenuity not toward honoring God but toward exalting themselves and the powers of darkness. After Babel, those scattered peoples revived the same patterns: temples shaped like mountains, plazas for gatherings, and processional roads that aligned with the heavens. In the Upano Valley, broad roads and platforms rose along rivers, a landscape once alive with ceremony but later abandoned, overtaken by floods and jungle. In the Maya lowlands, pyramids became stages for sacrifice, their stairways lifting offerings not to the creator but to gods of death and sky. Across Doggerland, Pavlopetri, and the drowned cities of Thonis Heracleon, idols were raised where the commandments of God were ignored, and in time, the waters claimed them. It is no accident that these designs mirror each other across oceans. They bear the fingerprint of a rebellion older than Babel, the same defiance that once filled the world before the flood. Nimrod, the mighty hunter, sought to defy God with his tower, to reclaim the glory of the world that had been destroyed. His anger burned when he learned that the judgment on that first world had been final, yet his vision lived on in the empires and cities that followed. But the ruins tell the end of that story. The earth itself rose up against these civilizations. Waters covered plazas, earthquakes split foundations, and jungles swallowed the stones. What they built without God could not last. The monuments remain as broken testimonies. That man's pride, temples to the serpent and the sun, and worship of false gods always end the same way: buried, forgotten, and left as warnings written in rock and soil.